Morning, gentlemen. Heading to the office now to film. It's nice and quiet over there. It's not far. It's about a 10-minute drive. And I don't have a Flash Gordon T-shirt, so I wore the next best thing. Fletch! Ah! Reporter of the universe.
Well, welcome. Thank you, Jex, for that most wonderful introduction. It's Tim's Final Confessions, and I'm Tim Derling with a very, very special episode. I've got a gathering of gentlemen here, fine gentlemen, that has never been together ever before on one show, just the four of us on this channel. So, so you've already met Fletch Gordon over here, Jex Russell, our stalwart, our Rudy Sarzo, I like to call him. He's good to go with whoever wants to do an episode. Of course, the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Mike Ladano, sporting a most excellent Tim's Final Confession shirt with our Def Leppard /esque logo, so we don't get barred. Actually, Mike's probably kind of hoping we do, because he'll have a real collector's item there. And the logo on Mike's mug is this. Grab a stack of rock. Listen, Rob, Jax, am I the only guy that didn't know that wasn't Mike singing? Because I didn't.
That's not me singing.
It's T-Bone, right?
Yeah, especially the verses. I'm like, yeah, that's probably how Mike sounds when he sings, because some people do, some people don't. But so Mike, I'm going to let you introduce a newcomer to TVC, a man who's no stranger to anyone who's watched any of Mike's live shows. Mike, take it away. Who is this gentleman that's joining us today?
Right beneath me is a friend that I've known since, I would say, 1985. So you can do the math there. Mr. Robert Daniels from CKWR 98.5 in Kitchener, Ontario, also available on visionsandsound.ca. He is a soundtrack, movie and video game soundtrack, in my opinion, expert. And you have picked the right man to sit in on this show.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks, Rob, for joining me. Yeah, it was a no-brainer. I talked to Mike about when I wanted to do this show, because it is a little bit off the beaten path of what I normally do on TVC. And he said, you got to see if Rob will do it. And so we're all at varying levels on this, but we're here for one reason. And we're here to talk about the 1980 cinematic movie.
It is.
Flash Gordon, remake of the old science fiction series from the 1930s?
1934, I believe, was the date.
Yeah. So the first thing I want to ask everybody, and we're going to go around. So as I'm seeing it, I see Jax, Mike, and then Rob. So we'll just go around. And the first thing I want to start with is, when did you first see the movie Flash Gordon? So I'm curious when we all got on board with this cinematic cinema. Here, I hesitate to say masterpiece. So Jax, take it away. Fletch, take it away.
So my first introduction to the movie came in 2005. So the movie was already a quarter of a century old when I was discovering it. See, at the time in 2005, every week I'd look through the TV guide and look for anything 80s. I'm an 80s movie nut. I look for anything 80s in the TV guide, movies that I could tape. I was still taping movies very actively. And on this one particular week, I see that UPN 38, the Boston-based network, is playing a movie called Flash Gordon from 1980. I'm like, I've heard the name Flash Gordon before. I know the character. Heck, I even know Flesh Gordon, but that's something entirely different. I'm like, I've never heard of this. I've never heard of this 1980 adaptation. So later that day, I go onto the internet, and keep in mind, YouTube hadn't completely taken off yet. So I had to go on IMDb, and I checked out a trailer for Flash Gordon. And right out of the gate, I'm seeing lasers, explosion, conflict. I'm seeing these hawk-like men flying into a colored sky. I'm seeing Flash Gordon on this little scooter-like thing flying. I'm like, what is going on? Add to that the song, Flash! Ah! And then the trailer ends, and 3 words come on the screen. The last thing in the trailer, music by Queen. I was like, I'm taping this. This Saturday, I'm going to record this movie. And that's exactly what happened. That following Saturday, I sat in front of the TV in my parents' basement, blank tape loaded into the VCR, remote control in hand so I could cut out those commercials. and it was a fun experience. I really enjoyed my first sitting. The only thing I should mention though is that when all was said and done and the commercials were cut out, the movie ran for 90 minutes. And the movie actually runs for about 110 minutes, which means that the first version I saw was like 20 minutes shorter. So there was a lot of stuff missing, but I didn't know at the time. I'd actually be curious. I still have the tape at my parents' house. I'd be curious to watch it and see what's missing. But all that aside, I enjoyed the movie. Visually, I thought it was great. Cheesy, very cheesy in terms of acting.
Yeah, let's hold off on the reviews.
Okay, sure.
On the reviews.
Okay, sorry.
So yes, so 2005. Okay, all right, Mike.
Well, sir, I think it must have been around 81 or 82, whenever it was released on VHS. And Rob will know there was a store in town called Steve's TV, and it used to be very, very small. I don't know where the original location was. It was basically like a one-room video store with a back room, and that was it. I can remember dark wood paneling. I can remember video discs. But one of our very first rentals was actually Superman the movie, which he discussed last night on Visions and Sound. One of our very first rentals was Flash Gordon, and it was more because my dad grew up on serials. I don't remember watching Flash Gordon with him as kids. I remember a lot of other ones. I remember the Crimson Ghost, but I don't specifically remember watching Flash Gordons with him. I must have. So it was mostly because of him. We were aware of the reviews. A friend of his had seen the movie and warned us that it was awful, but we're not getting into reviews yet.
No.
Back then, when you rented a VCR, because you rented the VCR, you didn't have one yet. Very few families did. You generally had a 3-day rental, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and you would watch your movies that you rented more than once because you were trying to get the value out of them. So we probably watched Flash Gordon 2 to 3 times that weekend. And we agreed with our friends' reviews, and I personally had never seen it again until last weekend when I'm preparing for this show. I had obviously been aware of this later on when I became interested in music, but I hesitated on pulling the trigger on this soundtrack because it was kind of like an oddball thing. Like, no, there's a bunch of instrumentals on here. So it really wasn't until recent years that I started to listen to the music of Flash and fall in love with that. And of course, we'll talk about my most recent impressions of the movie compared to my childhood impressions. I will tell you this. I only specifically remembered 2 scenes from the movie. And that's it. And I don't know why, but we'll get there.
Cool. So you saw it, okay, within a year of it actually being in theaters.
A year or 2, yeah.
So Rob, tell us your history with Flash.
Well, let's see. Go back to 1980. I'm in grade 5, and all the talk around the playground is, "What did you hear about this Flash Gordon? Flash Gordon, Flash Gordon?" And I'm like, "No, I haven't seen it yet." And they're like, "Really? You haven't seen it yet? It's awesome." I'm like, "Okay." So a couple of years go by actually, and I actually knew the soundtrack before I knew the movie, because my sister had the Queen's Greatest Hits album, and that was the only version of the Flash Gordon theme that I'd heard up to that point, and it used clips from the movie, and it was like a really cool kind of approach. So I was like, okay, this is pretty cool, and I was always quoting "Golden's alive" and all of these really funny lines that were, I later found out that's so campy. But in any case, my first viewing was very much like everybody else on a VHS tape that I recorded off of, I can't even remember the channel at this point, and they edited it heavily. Not for like, I think it was mainly for time, not for content. Because and I won't get into the specifics just yet. But yeah, that was kind of the first time I saw it. It wasn't until many, many years later when there was a digital film festival in town here at the Cineplex Odeon. And there was this great lineup of films. There was Planet of the Apes, the other one's Tron, Logan's Run, and Flash Gordon was in there as well. My friend and I, we would go to these films, and we'd spend the entire Saturday at the theater, and it was a blast seeing Flash Gordon on the big screen, because when you see it on the big screen, you catch things that you don't see on the small screen. So yeah, that was kind of my first experiences with Flash Gordon.
Awesome. And man, you guys are taking me back with the renting of not just the VHS tapes, but the VHS itself. Because in my family, we didn't have a VCR until Christmas 1985. So yeah, it would be a whole thing. There was a little convenience store that's still running today in Woodstock called Bunting's, just a little tiny little place, and they had, videotapes like a lot of places did. So there were dedicated video stores, but then most convenience stores got in on it as well. And I remember great big, came in like this big, almost like a suitcase with foam inside of it, and it was a top loading VCR, and
Yes,
it had a remote with about as much cord on it to get you from very very short cord on the remote control. So it's like, oh, this is so cool, I don't have to get up. So oddly enough, even though it was a few years later, I still my first viewing of Flash Gordon was on a VHS, because in 1992, that's when I got into Queen, like big time, like pretty much like, I don't know, March, April of 92, the rest of that year, it's pretty much all I listened to was Queen, like just diehard Queen fan on the spot. It was a combination of seeing the Concert for Life, the Freddie Mercury tribute, and seeing Extreme and Metallica and Def Leppard, bands I liked that were paying tribute. But also, obviously, there was Wayne's World, so yeah, movies. I mean, Queen and movies have been hand in hand forever, right? But what did it for me was listening to A Night at the Opera that a friend's father had. But that's another story. So in my quest to get everything, and we'll get into the soundtrack later, but late 1992, I was in my first year of community college, and it was on a break, like Christmas break. And just for the heck of it, I went to one of the video stores, and I happened to notice the cover on the shelf under what appeared to be dust on top of dust. This is 1992, right? And I'm like, oh, I think that's Flash Gordon. I go over and I pick it up. Yeah, it was Flash Gordon. I think it had been on the shelf for quite a long time, right? And so I took it home and watched it. So yeah, so my first time seeing it was in 1992. So now, before we get into our reviews of the movie, I'd like to go around again, and whatever versions we may own of the movie, let's show them off and talk about them. So start with Jax.
Okay. So in 2007, 2 years after I first saw the movie, they released this, which is the Savior of the Universe edition, which is great because the movie was pretty hard to find on video up until this point. And what's different about this edition, like you can still go into a store and find the Savior of the Universe edition now, but this specific one I got very early on, and it's out of print in this packaging. And what's special about it, my buddy Alex and I, we refer to it as the cigar box packaging, because it doesn't open like a traditional DVD, but rather upwards.
Oh.
And there, let me try to, you get some artwork, some character photographs here. You got the disc, but also that little thing that fell out is drawn. I'm not sure who drew this. I don't know. There's an interview, I think, with Alex Ross. So it might have been, I don't know, but it's kind of cool bonus.
Jax, can you hold up that packaging again, the open packaging? I want to mention something. So when you first held that up, down in the lower left where it's got a picture of Timothy Dalton, when you first held that up, I thought that was Freddie Mercury. So I thought it might have been 4 pictures of the band.
Imagine.
Does that not, like at first glance, just for a split second, does that not kind of look like Freddie would have had the mustache at that point?
Freddie did not have that kind of mustache. Freddie's mustache was more full. Timothy Dalton shaved it into more like a downward curvature.
Don't be like that.
Sorry, I'm a mustache snob.
I
am a mustache snob, Tim. We have to get our terminology right.
Okay. I'm mustache
says the man without a mustache.
My
I'm a
mustache is
mustache
top.
now, but I don't have a mustache.
Yeah.
I can't afford one.
I've never seen that kind of packaging before. That's
No.
really cool.
Yeah, it's the only DVD I have that's like that. It makes it different. I like it. As for the edition itself, there's some special features, interviews with Alex Ross, comic artist, screenwriter Lorenzo Semple Jr., but there's no director interview, there's no actors interviews, like there's no Sam Jones or Timothy Dalton, Melody Anderson. None of them are on here, which I thought was kind of disappointing. But they did end up releasing a documentary, which we might talk about later.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Mustache Man, give it to us.
I don't own a version of the movie. I never
Next.
will. I could show you my copies of Ted 1 and 2.
Okay.
Ted 1 in particular.
We'll get into that. Yeah, we'll get into that for sure, because that was serendipitous.
I got this. I got that.
Yeah.
I got these.
Okay.
That's all I got.
All right, Rob, what do you got? I'm sure you've got all of ours.
The VHS tape that I originally recorded, the one off the TV, is long gone, and I was always looking for a copy. Now, I like your Savior of the Universe edition because it has that weird packaging. Mine didn't come like that. Mine was just a regular DVD, just with the boring. I mean, hey, Gimli, get out of there. My breakfast. Anyway, so yeah. That's my copy of Flash Gordon. It has all the features that Jex talked about, and one of the things on here, I don't know, is it on yours as well, as the Flash Gordon 1936 serial episode, Chapter 1, Planet of Peril.
Yeah, everything is the same.
So that's my version. I like your version with the flip open packaging and the I'm missing. Like look at this.
Yeah,
pretty sparse.
That's the DVD. Yeah. Now, of course, I bought this at Giant Tiger. I was because I hadn't seen it anywhere else at that point.
Yeah.
So it was like, okay, I think it's time for the Savior of the Universe edition. So there we go. That's my story. And of course, like I said, I've seen it on the big screen. So there's that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So the first thing I have, I bought this on a whim. I'm not the movie guy that you got, like, that Rob and Jex are. But I bought this on a whim from Amazon. It was very cheap. I think it was $9.99. And it's this it's got 4 movies on one. So it's got Flash Gordon,
great lineup,
The Last Starfighter, Dune, and Battlestar Galactica, the original Battlestar Galactica. So it's just this flip out, one movie per disc. And I don't even think I watched, I didn't watch all of these, actually. The only one I watched, I was mainly interested in watching Dune. And maybe we'll do an episode on that later. What a weird movie. But anyway, and then probably 4 years ago, Sarah and I were on vacation in PEI, and I think it was a Giant Tiger. I just happened to see this, the same version that Rob has, in a $5 bin, no slip case, didn't even have a slip case on it, just $5. I thought, I could pay $5 for that, buy it, and it basically, I'd put it with my music DVDs, I'd put it with my Queen DVDs. And so that's how it's kind of cool. I thought we'd have all different copies of it, but at least 2 of us had the same one. Yeah. Nothing different on it, just the same that everybody's mentioned, but there isn't even anything in here like very bare bones. Then again, I can't complain because I paid $5 for it at Giant Tiger. So there you go. So yeah, so those are our editions of Flash Gordon. Let's talk about our reviews or our impressions of the actual movie itself. So Jex.
Okay. Yeah. So like I started saying, first impressions, like visually beautiful. The movie is really well shot. The cinematography is through the roof. Like the sets, the costumes, the just everything. It's really a really nice movie. There are things like the acting is a bit cheesy, but I like that personally. That's up my alley. I like cheesy acting in old movies. There's some humor that feels forced. Like they tried to throw in some jokes here and there, and they just stand out like sore thumbs because it doesn't fit the tone of the rest of the movie. But I get what they're trying to do. It just didn't quite hit the mark. But yeah, overall, like I like the movie for what it is. You kind of gotta take it for what it is, and it's not gonna be. They tried to be like as big as Star Wars. That didn't quite work. But if you take it for what it is, I think it's fun. It's a fun movie.
Mike,
Are you sure?
they say, here we go.
Okay, so I just wanted to play an audio clip here. As you guys know, last weekend I watched the film, and I was sending you guys notes as I was going, and
That's great.
I don't know, I was kind of blown away by the garishness of the colors. And it's funny that it's on that DVD with Dune, because I kind of saw a similarity with Dune and the throne room scene, just the same kind of garish, what the hell am I watching kind of. Anyway, I was watching the film and I was sending you guys notes, and I think this one kind of sums it up. If I can get the audio to work. Hang on.
Share the earth for our pleasure. I'm going from. My God.
Like, I was just shocked at this movie. I was just shocked. Like, who is this movie for? You've got slapstick comedy with Ryan Blessed tripping people and kind of going like, "Oh, it wasn't me who tripped that guy." And you've got this ridiculous football fight, which it's like,
Oh,
what is Flash's superpower? That he can fight, but only when he's holding a football? Is that what it is? And then you've got some of the aerial battle scenes were pretty cool. And I would wager that some of the design team of the Phantom Menace ripped off the droid bikes from the Flash Gordon bikes. No, the bikes that the droids were riding, those the Snap speeders from the Battle of Naboo that the droids were riding, kind of an upright standing surf kind of speeder, very similar to the Flash Gordon speeders. Although I think the Flash Gordon speeders were much cooler. They were more armored and had front guns. I did not like this film. I found it boring. I made some notes here which are way too excessive, but one of my notes here is too much kissing. Who is this movie for? Because I remember being as a kid, just being like, when is this scene gonna end? And it was just, there was sexy stuff that's obviously geared towards the adults in the audience, but how many adults are entertained by this kiddie stuff with the slapstick tripping scenes in the throne room? I don't know. Obviously, I'm not going to be too much of a downer here. But I did have some notes here. Where is the galaxy of pleasure exactly is what I want to know. I thought it was interesting that in the setup, Zarkov is basically the same character as Cavor from The First Men in the Moon. He takes these people up into space kind of unwillingly in a rocket. He's the builder of the rocket. I just saw that parallel as well. But that goes back to the comic books. Those three characters go back to the original, the comic strips. I also liked in one of the chase scenes how Dale Arden had to put on her high heels in order to run away. I thought that was very efficient of her. What am I missing here? The Baron saved Flash to kill Flash and failed. I had trouble following this thing. I liked the Cloud City. It was Cloud City with jets before George Lucas did his own Cloud City. And I enjoyed some of the comedy, such as all creatures will make merry under pain of death for the wedding. I never saw the ending. The copy that I had was missing the ending. And I was like, forget it. I'm not going out of my way to seek out the ending to this. Jex,
well, so how close to the ending were you? Like, where did it end? What scene?
Flash arrived, saved the day, and we were about to head into the denouement, and I'd have no idea.
Did you even see the
jump up and the picture freezes like on the back cover of the CD?
No. That scene was not there.
Yeah.
I was just like, thank God it's over. The agony has ended. I had more fun just making these ridiculous notes. Like, you can see for yourself how stupid these notes are. Like, I was just scribbling down things I was incredulous about. The two scenes that I did remember from when I was a kid, I think I remembered them because they were disturbing to me. And one of them was the challenge where
Ooh.
Flash had to put his hand in the,
Yeah.
which again, very Dune, very Gom
Yes.
Jabor, that scene creeped me out as a kid. It must have. Gooey, swampy things kind of creeped me out as a kid. So, scenes like that, Dagobah, the swamp from the Never Ending Story, very memorable. They sat in my memory a long time. And I remember the Flash one looking very cheap, and well, it still looks very cheap. The other scene that I remember was the Zarkov mind wipe scene.
Oh yeah.
Kind of disturbing. And
Very
I never
disturbing.
picked up on all that World War II Holocaust stuff back then either. But the scene that I remember the most is when he's like witnessing his own birth and he's saying, Papa, Papa. And I remember my mom being like, that's ridiculous. You can't remember your own birth. And that's literally all I remembered of the movie.
Yeah. Suspension of disbelief, Mom. Suspension of disbelief.
Suspension of disbelief, yes. I mean, it was a machine. It could extract memories. Anyway, those two scenes disturbed me as a kid. Legit disturbed me. So, it's no wonder that I never sought this movie out again, even with the Queen connection. But I will say, I thoroughly enjoyed listening to the movie. I mean, the soundtrack was fabulous. And I totally agree with everything that Jack said as well. I just want to make that totally clear. I'm not dissing the art of the movie, I appreciate it. I thought Sam J. Jones was actually quite good. And, I'm cool with Max von Sydow reading the laundry list. Back then, I think he must have been open to doing anything because Strange Brew came out around the same time. So I think Max von Sydow was less discerning back then. But I love Max von Sydow. I love Brian Blessed, or however his last name is supposed to be pronounced. Misa, not no. But
how woo.
Oh, and two Star Wars guys in that movie, being Brian Blessed from episode 1 and Max von Sydow from episode 7.
There you go. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah. All post Flash Gordon. And that's about all I have to say, because I won't drive you nuts with all of my ridiculous complaining.
Scenes that bother you as a kid. Yeah, there's something very real about that where you just legitimately go, I wish I hadn't seen that. But yeah, it makes an impression. I saw Cujo when I was about 8. And that's why I was never a dog person for many, many years.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Rob.
Well, in the great spirit of Barbarella, Conan the Barbarian, you're the hunter from the future. You got Flash Gordon right in the middle, and campy fun. Now, I don't know if you guys are aware of the story that George Lucas originally wanted Flash Gordon to produce a Flash Gordon film, and he couldn't get the rights. How did Dino De Laurentiis get the rights? I don't know what he got. Oh, I guess that would be one of the things. But without Flash Gordon, we wouldn't have, or without Flash Gordon, we wouldn't have gotten we wouldn't have gotten Star Wars. We wouldn't have got those great films that came out. Like the 80s was full of these muscle-bound heroes that were just, and Sam J. Jones was kind of at the beginning of all of that. So you had this wonderful campy style that I love. Mike, I was listening to your audio clip reviews, and it was like, who is this for? Who is this for? I'm like laughing my ass off listening to this, and I'm going, well, you know what? You take the kids to see it. You plunk them down in the chairs. The kids watch it for the action. You watch it for the implied sexuality that's in it, and your wife watches it for Sam J. Jones. There you go. That's who it's for. And it's hilarious. Topol is Topol in this film. He's just absolutely on point. Strap yourselves down.
I love Topol.
And he's great in this film. Yes, and the mind wipe scene, Papa. Yes, that is great. But yeah, the campiness of the football scene, and it's the only thing that Flash could get was like, and then Dale was on the side of go Flash, go, go Flash, go, and it's just like it's nuts. And I've said this before, and on my show, The last 20 minutes of the soundtrack and the film are exhausting. When you reach that final point where it's Freddie Mercury singing about being a hero, you're just like exhausted by the end of it. It starts with Brian May's version of the Wedding March right through to the end, and it is just, like I said, it's exhausting. But yeah, when I saw it with my friend and my friend Bob in the theater, we were just howling at some of the stuff that was going on with the weird creatures and the I can't remember the name of the planet, but the swamp and that sort of thing, and all the things that went on in there. What, I'm sorry?
Arborea?
I believe you're right on that. And then there's Princess Ardra? Ardra or whatever. And she and she just exudes. I mean, it a lot of people talk about when their sexual awakening was. It might have been her. It was with me. I don't know for sure, but it was such a bizarre. And there's that Dune connection that you've mentioned. Yeah, it has that kind of weirdness to it that Dune in '84 definitely had. And by the way, Tim, that's a great lineup on that 4-disc DVD, because one of the films that I missed when I listed all the films that I saw in that digital film festival, Battlestar Galactica was one of them as well. Seeing it on the big screen was pretty cool. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Flash Gordon for me was just a fun romp, and you, as Jack said, take it for what it is. It's fun. Turn off your mind, enjoy the Queen soundtrack, and have fun. Have fun.
And don't listen to me. Honestly, don't listen to me.
No, Mike, you brought up a lot of. You can't argue with any of your points.
No, exactly. There are some batshit insane scenes in that film that you're like, yeah, okay.
The eye bulge. There was an eye bulge scene that was like out of a cartoon.
Yeah.
That was good.
No, as far as my impression, I agree with all of you in a lot of ways, but Rob's right. It's extremely campy. I mean, it's like Batman TV series campy. You know, there was just no way that it would compete with Star Wars, and even the Star Trek movies, because
or even Galactica.
They just looked bigger budget, and this looked like. It didn't look like it came out in 1980 to me. It looked like a late 60s TV show. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. And yeah, the colors. I mean, it's gaudy with colors. It's very loud with colors.
A lot of sparkles.
And sparkles. Now, I will say this: unlike Dune, I could follow the story to Flash Gordon. Dune, there was a lot of parts where like, wait, what? Who? What? Who? Where? What's going on? At a certain
point, I can't wait to talk with you about that.
You can't dissociate. You can't avert your attention from Dune. Flash Gordon, you can come back to it and say, yeah, I see what's going on. Yeah, if I'd have seen that movie when I was a kid, and my wife and I joke about this all the time. I was a timid child, easily scared, easily frightened. That scene reaching into the stump, that would have done me in right. That would have been like, screaming, running from the theater. I think it's funny because Dino De Laurentiis is a big movie director, but the quality of the cinematography just doesn't look like it's ready to compete with the big blockbusters of the 80s. Granted, it was early, but Star Wars was 3 years earlier on a shoestring budget. And you watch that today and it looks like it came out last week. So I think if you were to sit this down in front of someone that had never seen it or never heard of it and say, what year do you think this is from? I don't think they'd tell you anywhere close to 1980. I don't know, 68, 71. But that doesn't necessarily make it bad. It is good, campy fun. It's good, campy fun. There are a few things that I noticed. They really accelerate timeline. Boy, Flash and Dale fall in love quick.
Noticed.
They literally just met on that plane. And then in no time at all, Flash.
She didn't even like him on the plane. She didn't even like
we
him.
only have 14 hours to save the earth. And they're talking about getting married and having kids. I'm like, whoa, that escalated quickly. And mind you, Flash is on the ship with Aura, and she's loving up on him, and he's like communicating, wow, this girl is really turning me on right now. She's like, what? Nothing. Like, it's like,
that's the humor.
Yeah. You know, and then I don't know. I Brian Blessed is great, however you say his name. He's like the not the comic relief, because you know he's a good, strong, funny character.
He's the Sala. He's the Sala from Indiana Jones.
The Sala,
he's the Sala.
And it's funny. You know what? It's funny you mentioned that, because I also think this is serendipitous. He's the Gimli.
Speaking of whom,
the cat, the voice, John Rhys Davies. Yes, he is he's, you know, even though it takes a while for them to become allies. But the story makes sense.
Just the Gungans.
You've got this, you've got this, you know, this dictator basically in Ming the Merciless, who hardly looks like Max von Sydow. They got him done up so much, but the voice is unmistakable, right? You know, he's this dictator, and Flash is saying, you don't have to listen to this guy if you work together. And, you know, it's ABC after school special. Moral of the story is, one to grow on. But you know, it's easy enough to follow. I did kind of, you know, something sustained your interest. I like the fight between, what is Timothy Dalton's character's name?
Prince Baron?
Yeah, Prince Baron.
Yes. The fight with he and Flash on the rotating disc where the spikes, you know, come, you know, that was kind of like, I don't know how this is going to turn out. You know, it's got some action in it. It's got all different kinds of action, but it's not something that you return to all the time. But I think that as a point of interest, it's worth $5 at Giant Tiger or some, you know, to pick up and watch if you're a sci-fi fan. It doesn't hurt if you're a Queen fan either. We'll get into that. But the only other thing I'll mention is that, so the actor's name that plays Zarkov is indeed Topol. Why on earth would you name yourself after the smoker's toothpaste?
That's part of his real name, is it not? Is it not?
Because he's billed simply as Topol.
Yes, but he has a first and last name, and I believe that's his first name, if I'm not mistaken. I might be wrong.
His first name is I don't know how it's pronounced. Chaim. Yeah.
Chaim, okay. like Gene Simmons' real name. Chaim.
Exactly. Spelled the same way.
Okay.
Fiddler on the Roof was his big film, as we discovered in our Fiddler on the Roof was his big film, as Jackson and I discovered in our research.
Yeah. Yeah, it does not look the same crazy.
But I was aware of Topol as more of a, and I don't know how I was aware of him as a singer. It might have been through my mother, but I was aware of him more as for his singing at that time when I was a kid. And that was probably through my mother and Fiddler.
Speaking of Topol, I forgot to mention this. There's a quote in the movie. It's kind of a throwaway quote, but when I heard it, I'm like, that's actually really funny. I forgot about it. Like, it's right at the beginning when you first meet Dr. Hans Zarkov, and he's got his like sidekick or assistant, whatever, called Munson.
Yes.
All hell's breaking loose, the hot hail in the lab. And then I was like, we got to get out of here. And Munson doesn't want to go in the ship. So he pulls a gun on him and he goes, pack your toothbrush and whatever. And that's such a weird thing to say, like, pack your toothbrush.
Okay. That's another thing. They go from him being like, you know, almost like a mad scientist character, and, you know, he's off his rocker a little bit, to they just sort of totally abandoned that part of his character. Like, oh, he's a good guy.
Well, Tim,
he pulled a gun on his assistant.
The enemy of my enemy is my friend. They were allies of convenience once they were abducted.
They're thrown together, right?
Yes, exactly. In the sequel, maybe Zarkov would have been the bad guy.
Oh, that's another thing. This is something that Mike missed.
No,
obviously they had thought that maybe this would become a franchise. I think because the end, you get the feeling that what's her face, what do you mean, Flash Gordon? Her
alive?
Yeah. What? Yeah. Her.
Yeah.
You get they sort of make it hint like she survived.
Well, Jackson and I did some research, and there was a planned trilogy of films, but it didn't happen because Sam J. Jones and Dino De Laurentiis had a falling out. Mm-hmm. But there was planned to be more. And a trilogy. Why not?
Well,
they would have been right. They would have been right with the times.
Well, Sam Jones was actually out of the production early on. Like him and De Laurentiis really like butted heads, and Sam Jones was gone. So a lot of in the movie, there's a lot of stand-in scenes where
Wow,
it's not
like
even Sam
body
Jones.
doubles.
Yeah, body doubles, dubbing, because a lot of the scenes needed to be dubbed over, and some scenes it's not even Sam Jones's voice. I
Didn't
think
know
most
that.
notably
So
the
it's
first
like
scene in
Peter
the
Chris.
plane.
It's like
Like
Peter
Peter
Chris and Ace
Chris.
Frehley Kiss Makes
Exactly.
the Phantom.
Same
We're
kind of
just ordinary
situation.
human beings.
Yeah, same thing. Phantom of the Park. Like
Dean's
Yeah.
brother was an only child.
Beethoven's fifth.
but yeah, that scene on the plane, I feel like that's the one that stands out. Like that is not Sam's voice. Like it doesn't sound like him at all.
That's right. I noticed that it didn't seem right to me, and I wasn't sure if it was
Yeah.
just bad production of the 80s or not, but I guess there's the
No.
explanation. I
Wow.
did notice something off.
It's really soft, like a voice.
Right.
Then the
Okay.
other scenes where it's like Flash Gordon, quarterback, New York Jets.
New York
He's got a-
Jets,
he's got a
yeah.
deeper
Okay.
voice.
I was wondering about that.
Wow.
I was wondering, you know what? You answered a
And-
question for me that I did notice.
Yeah, it's a
That
different
might
actor.
almost give you a clue as to what order the scenes were filmed in.
Well,
Yeah.
not necessarily, because that
Well,
could
they
be
could go-
bad
yeah, they
audio.
could be going
Like
back,
there
but
could be a
I
lot
don't-
of like air conditioning blowing and causing background noise that they can't use the on-set takes.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different reasons for doing dubbing.
Mhm.
I also wanted to point out a quote. Brian Blessed said, "Who wants,
Who
to live forever?"
Forever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, if he'd
Yeah.
also said there could be only one, that would have been really like, wait a minute. Yeah. Yeah. So before we move on to the soundtrack itself, while we're just still talking about films, we do need to talk about it. It was mentioned earlier. Sam J. Jones kind of came back in his role, sort of.
dyed his hair blonde.
Yeah, in Ted from what, 2012, 2013?
I say around 2012.
And of course, Seth MacFarlane is, probably around, our ages, this is more or less big pop culture fan, loves Queen. He's referenced Queen and Family Guy several times. So it makes sense. And so, so whoever wants to, I've only seen it once and I remember laughing my head off at the randomness of it. But if someone want to explain like how Sam J. Jones / Flash Gordon figures into the movie Ted.
I can kind of explain it. Well, basically, the characters of what's his name, Marky Mark.
Mark.
Yeah.
Mark Wahlberg. His best friend is like a teddy bear, and they grew up watching Flash
Flash Gordon.
They're huge
Yeah.
fans. And then now as adults, the teddy bear is at a party, and he calls his buddy Mark Wahlberg. He's like, "I'm at a party. Sam Jones is here. You gotta come meet him."
And his hair is parted in the middle.
yeah. So I've only seen it maybe twice. I don't remember all the quotes.
I've
but
seen it 100 times.
And so they party with him, and Sam Jones plays himself, but a very exaggerated version of himself. He's taking shots,
Doing coke.
and So when Mark Wahlberg comes to the party and sees Sam J. Jones, he starts to imagine him in the suit. So you see Sam Jones
The
wearing
wind
Flash
blows his
Gordon.
hair.
Yeah, he's walking through the apartment, like the party, the hair in the wind, the outfit. It's well done, and you see that Sam Jones is having fun doing the cameo.
Clearly.
I
mean, you would too. They're idolizing him in the film.
Yeah,
You would love to play that. You would love that.
It's great, and I got to give credit, like Seth MacFarlane, by doing this. I feel like he brought Flash Gordon to the attention of a new generation.
Mhm.
Because like teens or whatever were going to see this movie in the theater, and they're like, "What the hell is this Flash Gordon?" And then maybe they go look it up and discover it, which I think is great. Because like I said, I discovered the movie in 2005. I had never heard anyone talk about it, and then by the Savior of the Universe edition, I feel like that maybe brought it to a new audience, and then maybe Seth MacFarlane with Ted. Because when I saw Ted, I saw it in the theater, and I remember I was loving the Flash Gordon references. Like I was there laughing. I was in stitches almost. And the whole audience was like crickets. Like no one was getting it. I'm like, what's wrong with you people?
That's the other thing I liked about Seth MacFarlane. He doesn't care who gets them, because sometimes they reference pretty obscure things like the Herculoids and things like that. But it's funny that when I saw Ted, my now wife and I were just dating, like just starting to see each other. And we watched the movie, and I'm just laughing my head off at this, and I'm explaining, probably mansplaining, but the whole Queen thing. And also right around that time, the Queen Extravaganza, which was the officially sanctioned Queen tribute band was playing in Moncton actually, and so we were talking about going. We ended up going, and it was great. And for my radio job, I ended up talking to Tyler Warren, who was the drummer. I don't know if he's still with them, but in the Queen extravaganza, and talked about, changing up the set list. And I said, Tyler, I got to ask you something. I've just seen the movie Ted. He started to laugh because he knew. I said, is there any chance you guys could do Flash? He's like, not right now, but you never know. Now that would not be an easy song to pull off. You'd have to pull in the dialogue and all the sound effects, but yeah. And Rob, I'll throw it over to Rob because Rob mentioned a documentary about Sam J. Jones. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the documentary kind of picks up where Sam J. Jones is working on Flash Gordon, and it's life after Flash. So it follows Sam J. Jones through the ups, the highs that he had with Flash Gordon, and then his eventual fall to not being called anymore on the phone by agents or not getting work, and then having his career reinvigorated. He was a bodyguard for a bit, but then Ted kind of brought back his career, and now he's getting phone calls again. And it's a really cool documentary because it features a lot of the cast of the film. It features like other actors from other genres. There's like a couple of people from like Guardians of the Galaxy that show up. And of course, Brian Blessed is Brian Blessed.
Oh.
I mean, the man just does not turn himself off. One of the funniest parts of the film, or one of the funniest parts of the film, he goes, and he says, he's all hunched over like this, and he goes, so can we say the F word? And he's like,
yeah.
And they go, so yeah, in this film we can. He says, okay, and he goes on to talk about the scene and what was said afterward. But the man is a joy to watch, even when he's not on screen. But yeah, I just, the documentary is a great watch. It explains a lot what happened behind the scenes with Flash Gordon, but it also is kind of a redemption story for Sam J. Jones and his return to acting and his return to essentially what was his life. Now he's able to provide for his kids again and all of these wonderful things. And yeah, I tweeted that I had this was years ago, that I had seen the Life After Flash, and I enjoyed every minute of it. And I hashtagged Sam J. Jones or whatever they call it, and I got a like from Sam J. Jones, said that saying that I enjoyed the documentary. But yeah, it's a good documentary. It covers things that you wouldn't expect. And there's a little extra stories that I want to add to the film, but it talks to the composer, it talks to Brian May, it talks to all of these people that were involved with the film, and it's a wonderful look at. You often say, well, what happened to Sam J. Jones? Why did he show up in Ted? That kind of thing. Well, now you see what happened and the falling out that he and Dino De Laurentiis had, and all of this thing. It's a great documentary, and as of this recording, it is still available on Tubi TV. So yeah, watch it if you can.
I want to chime in on that because I was actually watching it last night in preparation for this. I didn't get to finish it. I got maybe about halfway. I got up until the Brian May interview. Yeah. And yeah, Rob, everything you're saying is true. It's a fascinating documentary. Like I said, it makes up for the lack of special features and interviews on the DVD because you get everything. You get like Melody Anderson. You get even the guy who played Clytus. I forget his name, but everyone is being interviewed that was with the movie. And that's when I really discovered about the falling out between Sam Jones and Dino De Laurentiis. And like you said, Brian Blessed, he's just fun to listen to. That's what the F word scene, that's what he was talking about. Dino De Laurentiis coming onto the set and stressing out everybody. Nobody could work, nobody could act because they were so stressed that the producer was on set. So he went to him and he said, I'm not going to say word for word, but he was like, Dino, F off, you're stressing everybody out. F off. You know, and it's yeah, great documentary. Like you said, Rob, it's on Tubi TV. That's where I was watching it. So I recommend it to anyone who's fans of Flash Gordon.
I gotta watch it. It sounds right up my alley.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. Like, you know, Seth's obviously someone that grew up, you know, maybe saw the movie in the theater when he was a young kid, always liked it, and just said, you know, when he gets into a position of hey, you know what? I'm going to write Sam J. Jones into this movie just because. And yeah, I've seen him in recent years. I've seen pictures of people meeting him at Comic Cons. And so, yeah, he's, you know, now people know who he is. Whereas before it was like, who's Sam J. Jones? Oh, he played Flash Gordon in what? You know? So, yeah. So now let's move on to what, you know, usually what my shows are about. This has been absolutely fantastic. I want to talk about the soundtrack. So the soundtrack came out in late 1980. So 1980, just to put this in perspective, was a huge year for Queen. Earlier that year, they released the album The Game, which was their single biggest selling studio album. That wasn't a greatest hits. Crazy Little Thing Called Love and another one, Bites the Dust, both #1 songs, huge hits all over the world. It was their peak, their, I guess, initial peak, because I think their music is more popular now than it ever was. But it was a high point for them. And, you know, I have to think that there was a certain amount of, well, now what can we do? We've conquered the music world, you know, the pop music world, the rock world. Now what should we do? Let's score a movie soundtrack. And maybe the documentary explains, or maybe Brian explains this. I'm not really sure how it ended up happening. I have to think that the soundtrack was mostly Brian May's baby, because the album is co-produced by Brian May and Reinhold Mack, their producer, as opposed to a band co-producing credit, which it normally is. So I have to think that he was the guy saying, come on, let's do this. But before we
I have a story.
Oh, okay, cool.
Ooh.
Right on. So we'll go around in order. So let's show off what versions of the soundtracks we have, talk about our impressions of it as an album, you know, as a recording, and we'll start with Jex.
All right. Well, I have what seems to be an original, I think it's a US pressing of the record. I think I just noticed now it's embossed. I don't think I had ever noticed that before.
That's nice.
Yeah, it's all embossed. You got the back, obviously.
Mine's not embossed.
No, really?
No.
Not even the bottom where it says soundtrack music by Queen?
Hold up. You got me all.
You've triggered Tim. You've triggered him.
Maybe I have a rarity here. Huh?
I don't know.
I see it's a cutout.
No, nothing's embossed.
It is a cutout. Good eye, Mike.
Oh, I can tell a promo a mile away, or a cutout. If
It
not
still
a
has
promo.
the plastic on it. And look at this. I don't. Well,
298 or
Yeah.
something like that.
$2.99. Wow, you got it. Hawkeyes.
No, Hawkman.
Yeah, there you go. So I will go.
Thanos alive.
I actually got this for free. My buddy Pla had this. He ordered it on eBay probably about 10 years ago, and he didn't really care for it, but he knew I liked the movie, so he just gave it to me. I'm very grateful, and it's got like all of the goodies. I'm gonna try to show you guys. So yeah,
It's rare, actually.
Beautiful.
It's a rare album.
Yeah, no kidding.
That's frameable,
I know.
and that's beautiful layout on the back there with the red and yellow text.
Oh yeah, and it doesn't end there yet. You got the inner sleeve as well.
Yes, there it is.
All of the characters, which is kind of similar to what I had on the DVD packaging in a way. And then on the other side, of course, you got the band photos.
And Freddie wearing the Flash.
Yeah,
t-shirt.
Right? I mean, it's so perfect.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then of course, the record. If I can even get it out. Has like a custom.
love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
So yeah, and as for my feelings on the soundtrack, I like it. I think it's really well done. I love the whole synthesizers, like the football battle is probably my favorite. Not just the song, but the scene. So and you got, I can't put my record back, but yeah, you got a whole bunch of moods on this thing. You got the higher tempo songs, you got the slower, more like ambiance songs, and I like it. I think it flows well as an album. I enjoy it. It's not one I listen to too often because, you know, it's more of like when I'm thinking of the movie, I'm like, okay, I'll put it on. But yeah, I dig it. I dig it a lot.
Cool. More on the cutout thing in a bit. So, Mike.
Right. So as you know, Tim, I like to get all the tracks, right?
Oh, yes.
So that necessitated my two copies here with the 1991 Hollywood Records and the 2011 2 CD reissue with all those lovely bonus tracks. Now, of course, the reason I need two copies is because this one had a remix on it that was not included on this, and for good reason. Flash's theme, 1991 bonus remix by Mr. Long 9.5. Okay.
Yeah.
A 6 3/4 minute remix. Flash one time, Flash two times. I hate when rap is overdubbed over Queen songs, and it happens a lot more frequently than the viewers might know. Do some digging into your Queen remixes, and you'll see rap has been frequently overdubbed over Queen songs post Freddie's death. But I needed it because I had to have all the tracks. This is the much better version. And Jax mentioned the football fight. There's a great demo of football fight on here with Freddie playing piano instead of synth.
Really?
Yeah, there's Flash live in Montreal, 1981. The Hero live in Montreal, 1981. There's an early version of The Kiss, which is one of the other moods that you mentioned. There's a great version of The Hero here, 1980 revisited. Oh my God, better than like the album version of The Hero. But as a soundtrack, I really enjoy listening to this. I might listen to this more frequently than some of the other Queen studio albums. Like you guys, I was first exposed to Flash's theme probably on Much Music, putting 2 and 2 together that was a band called Queen on that movie that I saw when I was a kid. And I really liked it. It's that bass line, right? That John Deacon bass line. Boom, 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 boom. And and it's not just that simple, because he's on the left hand, he's doing muting this to mute. Yeah. He's a very, very creative bassist. I think John Deacon might be one of the most underappreciated bassists.
Agreed.
And largely because he's disappeared, but that's a whole other story. As a soundtrack, as I said, I really enjoy listening to it. As Jack said, there's different moods, but it always seems to come back to a core root Queen sound. They were incorporating synths at this time, as you talked about The Game. Yeah. But I think that was their first album that included synths.
It was, because they always boasted nobody played synthesizers. Yeah, up until then. So
I loved it, but then I put 2 and 2 together as an adult when I listened to this. There was one theme on here that was very familiar to me, and I think I'm not sure which it is on the track list here, but it's which Freddie Mercury wrote and was later used in a video game called Vanguard.
Vanguard, yeah.
And so as an adult, when I picked up this album and played it, I'm like, what is that? I know that. And then it kind of clicked. It's like, that's that video game that I played to death in the basement for years. And I've had no idea that it was Freddie Mercury's theme music. And I wonder if Freddie Mercury ever saw a dime from that. I was mentioning to Tim offline earlier, I wish I brought the cartridge with me, and then I could at least flip through the booklet and see if there was a credit for some of the music. But alas, I'll have to follow up on that at a later date. That's about all I have to say. Except for I really do love this soundtrack quite a lot, and I'd rate it 4 out of 5 stars. I'm not sure. Actually, you know what? Let me just quick check my review, my official review. I rated it 4 out of 5 stars. Talk about consistency. I love consistency. Yeah.
Cool. All right, Rob, the soundtrack.
Okay, Gimli, I'm going to need my both hands for this. So you're going to need to go either over onto the bed. Okay. So this is my original copy of Flash Gordon. It is the Canadian copy.
Yeah.
And it is not embossed, which I am very jealous of. It does not have the inner sleeve with all of the, or maybe it does. Hang on just a second. It's been a number of years since I've looked at it. Oh, actually, it does have the color sleeve, so that's cool.
There you go.
And but yeah, I first became aware of the music on the Greatest Hits album with all of the movie clips and that sort of thing. My sister hated the theme because I was always whenever I didn't have a record player at the time, or I didn't have a record player or a cassette player at the time. And I would always ask, hey, can you play the Flash Gordon soundtrack? She said, no, I don't. And the only thing she liked about the theme was when Freddie starts singing about "It's a man's courage."
Yeah.
You know, and that was the only thing she liked. I was just enthralled by this theme. So later on, and again, Mike, where did you get that 2-disc set? Because I haven't seen that outside of you
That's the
presenting it.
2011 series of reissues, I think.
I either got it at Sunrise Records or Amazon. Can't remember exactly which.
Okay. Because I picked this up on CD, and I was trying to do a kind of a retrospective on the show, and it was like very, very short. Okay, so you were saying all about the original soundtrack music by Queen. That's not entirely true. And the next thing I will show you is probably something that you guys have not seen. I think Mike, you may have seen this. This is the Flash Gordon score by Howard Blake.
That's cool.
Now, here's the story behind this. They were recording the score to Flash Gordon. Queen had a small amount of music, and they had this other composer who I don't know the name of. He left the project in the middle and left a symphony orchestra and Queen on the recording stage. Howard Blake, who you might know as doing the score to a beloved children's classic called The Snowman from 1982. He gets a call in a panic saying, we've got Queen and we've got the orchestra on the stage, and nobody's doing anything, and it's costing us thousands of dollars. So Howard comes down there and talks to Dino De Laurentiis and all the other producers and that sort of thing. And he says, okay, I'll do your score, but I need 14 days. Dino says, you have 10. So in that time, Howard Blake worked with Queen, orchestrated the score, wrote a score, orchestrated the score, recorded the score, and nearly died of exhaustion after having 10 days. They had to wake him up, and it's in the documentary as well. Howard Blake's they woke him up, and his wife asked him, what day is it? He says, it's Thursday. No, she goes, it's Saturday. You've been asleep for 4 days. So he had worked so hard that he put himself into a state of exhaustion and like pneumonia in both lungs, that kind of thing. So yeah, Howard Blake is the unsung hero of the Queen of the soundtrack to Flash Gordon. I did an interview with Howard Blake a number of years ago for the 20th or 30th anniversary of The Snowman, and we got on the topic of Flash Gordon, and that's how I actually acquired this, and I think it's still available, but it's the company's called Super Tracks Music. So if you're curious, and it does have some of the Queen stuff on here. It has, I think it's about an hour or so of music that you don't hear on this. But it's the Queen stuff that everybody knows, but it's Howard Blake that worked on the other music that works in the Queen stuff. So yeah, this interview with Howard Blake, and I think it's available on my website, visionsandsound.ca. So have a listen to it. And if it's not, I'll put it up for sure. And yeah, he talks about just being absolutely worn out by the end of it. And of course, having that exhaustion and the pneumonia in both lungs. So yeah, Howard Blake is the unsung hero of the Flash Gordon score. Queen did a lot of work, but it was Howard that I think without him we wouldn't have even the album music because he's actually credited on the album as well. So yeah, it was a great interview. I'm glad I got a chance to speak to him because he was a great guy to talk to. It's funny, I can't even remember when or who I actually had to talk to get to Howard Blake. But yeah, it was a great interview, and I enjoyed that immensely. But yeah, the I mentioned before that the last 20 minutes of that score or of the soundtrack is absolutely exhausting. And it's true. Like I said, from the moment of the wedding march, which is played excellently by Brian May, it's a fantastic track, right through to that explosion at the end. It's like it's 20 minutes that you will not forget anytime soon on that soundtrack. And it all came from this really campy movie that I'll slap in every once in a while and just enjoy the hell out of it. So yeah, but yeah, that's it. That Howard Blake story should be told a bit more, and he does talk about it in the documentary. He's interviewed as well as Brian May is interviewed, and so yeah, it's pretty amazing.
This is why we got Rob on here. That's fantastic. So yeah, wow. How do I follow that up? So my versions of the soundtrack and my impressions of it. So like I said earlier, I got into Queen way back in 92. And by that time, the Hollywood Records reissues, which had came out in 1991, they signed with Hollywood Records in the US and Canada, put out the album Innuendo, which came out early 91. So it came out, Freddie Mercury died in November of 91. And so not only did Hollywood put that out, they also reissued the Queen catalog. Little confusion with the greatest hits and all of that, but we won't go into that. And that meant that those Hollywood issues was pretty much all you were going to find, which is why I always wanted to try and find, the Capitol CDs and all of that. But I just started buying them here and there as I saw them. And I think it was later in the summer of 92. By this point, I think I was down to needing about 3, 4, maybe 5 of the Queen CDs. I had the rest of them. And I just happened to go into my local Sam the Record Man and looked on the shelf and saw this. I mean, this stands out. This definitely stands out on the shelf. And I remember reading about the fact that Queen did the soundtrack. I'd heard of Flash Gordon as I would have thought it was like as comics. So I knew there was a sci-fi, character, franchise, whatever, called Flash Gordon. And apparently there was a movie and Queen did the soundtrack. Okay, well, I'm learning everything I can learn about the band. Free internet once again. And it's funny because I don't remember seeing the video on Much Music. I remember seeing, Radio Gaga and One Vision and A Kind of Magic and I Want It All, like the mid to later 80s stuff. But I always wondered about something, and later on I found out what it was. In the video to Radio Gaga, I think there might be a couple versions of it, but there is a version that has clips from older Queen videos in it. And there's one, and I think it's in the second verse when Freddie sings about, we watch the stars on videos for hours and hours. There's one scene where you can see Brian and Freddie and Roger going, like singing into one mic with headphones on, going, that's from the Flash video. That's them going, Flash. Yeah. And years later, I'm like, oh, that's what that is. Anyway, so it was just a Queen album that I didn't have. And so I took it up to the counter and I went to buy it. And the relief on the manager's face was obvious. And he said, I am so glad that you're buying this. I thought I was going to eat that one. And
same with my record store, Tim. Our cassette copy of it was there from 91 to 94.
Yeah, but this was 92, so it hadn't been there that long. But the way he explained it is that somebody that he knew well enough, called him. This is somebody that had money that, he knew he was going to come through with it. Said, give me all the Queen CDs, click, basically. And just in case, he ordered 2 of everything that was available. Well, little by little, as a matter of fact, now that I think about it, I may have bought the extra, the Game and the Miracle, but that's another story. little by little, they sold all except for this extra copy of Flash Gordon, which I just happened to pick up. And yeah, this is the 1991 Hollywood Records version. It's a Canadian edition, and yeah, all of those 1991 issues had something extra on them. Sometimes it was worthwhile. For example, the reissue of the first album had Mad the Swine. Queen 2 had See What a Fool I've Been. They'd have B-sides and things like that. Other times they had completely useless remixes. And that one that Mike already talked about is completely stupid, and I never listened to it. I listened to it once, and I don't even think I listened to it all the way through. Pointless. But they do a great job reproducing, the inner sleeve. And, the credits are there. And yeah, Howard Blake. I know he's in there. Yeah, additional orchestral arrangements by Howard Blake, conducted by Howard Blake. As a soundtrack, I think it works extremely well. I think that the soundtrack is on par with big blockbuster movie soundtracks.
Mm-hmm.
And this was new for Queen. This wasn't writing songs. This wasn't writing verse, chorus, bridge, solo, outro. This was writing mood music. So you've got tracks like The Kiss or Resurrects Flash, and it's basically Freddie in falsetto. And I love Football Fight. Like, it's so much fun. I've said this in our group chat. I used to, back I was still like making like mixtapes, and if I'd have like the side of a cassette tape that just had a little bit left, I'd always stick Football Fight on the end because it's only a minute and a half long. So for those people that don't know, a lot of people know Flash's theme by now. Sometimes it's just called Flash because it's been on many greatest hits albums. There's only 2 songs proper on here. Really 1.5. The Flash theme they're both written by Brian May too. The Flash theme was the quote unquote hit. I think it was a bigger hit in the UK. I think in Billboard it peaked at 42. So it was almost a top 40 single, which is funny to think about hearing that on the radio. Open fire, all weapons.
What do you mean Gordon's alive?
Yeah.
Flash Gordon approaching.
Dispatch Boris and Ajax to bring back his body. That was Queen with Flash, it just kind of speaks to how big they were at that time, that they could get that much airplay with a quirky little tune like that. But when I watched the movie, and again, when I watched the movie preparing for this, it's the first time I'd seen it since 1992, and I was struck by how well the music fits the movie. Like, Ming's got a theme that when you hear it, okay, here's a scene with Ming. And one of my favorites, I laugh every time I hear it, because the Flash theme, like a lot of movies, it reprises a lot. Yeah, just a little hint of it, but I like as the album goes along, it'll go Flash. Yeah. Wow. It does that, but it's instead of the way that it starts, it's like this. Yeah. Yeah.
Savior
I really like that. So, I think, Mike, what you've got is the 2011 reissue of that. Correct. I've got the game and the works in that series with the bonus discs. I don't have the Flash one. I may have to look into that, but I do know that they did do Flash and they did do the Hero in concert, because I've got it's really good. It's from 1982 from the Hot Space tour. It's called Queen on Fire at the Bowl. It's the Milton Keynes Bowl. And they do both of those songs there because, it was fairly recent, right? So the other versions of that I have, of course, got the 8-track. Yeah. This is US RCA Music Service version, so it looks a little bit different than the retail would have looked. But there's a lot of tracks on here, and because they're relatively short tracks, they are in order. So that's kind of cool. So so this is the US on Elektra.
Are there any part A, part Bs on that, or are they all complete tracks?
Arborea, Planet of the Tree Men is split between programs 2 and 3.
And that's it.
That's it. The rest
not bad.
Of them, it's actually pretty clean as far as the breaks and stuff. This took me a while to find, the old Canadian cassette of it. And I like how the artist, where the artist would normally be, it's Flash Gordon original soundtrack music by Queen.
I like that too.
Nope, not Howard Blake. And really small printing, a lot of tracks on here. And it's not a black cassette. So I'm guessing this is an original.
Yeah.
Normally it would be reissued with a black cassette. And finally, I've got the same vinyl that Rob has. Took me a long time to find this one. This is not easy to find. Jax, it's the fact that you were gifted one, it's quite something. So yeah, mine also is a cutout, but it's got a hole punched through it, not the complete chunk taken out of it. Mine is also a Canadian. And as I've said many times before, anything on the WEA labels that was released in Canada between about 1980 and 1984, you'll see a Canadian flag up there, maple leaf up there in the corner. I love the custom label on here. I think it's really cool. And the version I have, and I'm not going to complain, I just have this paper sleeve. I do have this cardboard thing.
You have it too.
I did not have the cardboard thing.
So the credits on the back of it. So that's, I'll take it. And I think as a soundtrack, I think it works better than I remembered. I remember thinking I had to buy this so that poor guy didn't have to eat it. No, I had to buy it to complete the collection, but I didn't think it was going to be something I listened to all that much. And actually, I do put it on once in a while in more recent years. And I think it's, this was new territory for them. And it wouldn't be the last, of course, because, the album, A Kind of Magic, is essentially the Highlander soundtrack.
A kind of soundtrack. It's even partly the, what is it called? The Iron Eagle soundtrack with One Vision. And then, of course, famously, there's Metropolis, Freddie Mercury had Love Kills, and that later became a Queen song and all of that. So this was it. This was their first venture into that. And really, not every rock band could pull that off, but because the guys in Queen were so talented and so they could play a variety of instruments, all of them figure in on the songwriting. Like every one of them figures in on writing at least one piece for this movie. And it kind of fits together. I'm really impressed with how it all fits together. One thing I forgot to mention, Ace Frehley owes a debt to that logo. He ripped it off for Frehley's Comet, for sure.
Oh, yeah. And, and I think people need to understand that the Flash Gordon serials of the 30s were monumentally influential on the likes of George Lucas and I don't know, maybe even Gene Roddenberry. I'm not sure, but
Surprise me.
It has to start somewhere, right? So these early days, and I'm kind of surprised that there hasn't been, because they remake movies that are less than 10 years old now. I'm really surprised somebody hasn't stepped up, like Disney hasn't stepped up and said, you know what, we're going to do the definitive Flash Gordon movie. I doubt they will. I don't think they can succeed in that, but I'm surprised somebody hasn't tried another crack at it. Or maybe Rob can correct me on that. Maybe
you could say the same thing about Buck Rogers.
Exactly. Yeah. Right around the same time. So guys, that was incredible. That was a really, really in-depth look at the movie, our impressions of it, and of course, the soundtrack. So I want to thank each of you for doing this. This was really, really fun. Thanks very much, Rob, for guesting. We'll have you on again for sure. We should probably do a Dune episode and maybe something else. A couple things I need to get before I do that. But visionsandsound.ca and listen to his radio show and look for that interview with Howard Blake. That's a really cool thing. Mike, of course, grab a stack of rock and all of us. You'll see on there at one time or another. Grab a stack of rock merch at tpublic.com. Jex Russell, everybody's favorite co-host. He's my co-host. He's Mike's co-host. He's Deke's co-host. He's the co-host of choice. And I want to thank you guys all for coming on here and talking Flash Gordon. Who would have thought that we would spend over an hour talking about this movie and its accompanying soundtrack? So I want to thank everybody for watching and let us know what you think. What do you guys think of the movie and or the soundtrack? Comment, and I want to thank everybody for watching Tim's Vinyl Confessions. Yeah!